I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsor. If you have a laser device for training and you want to take it to the next level, or if you're looking to get into using a laser device for training, check out the products at laserapp.com. LASRAPP.com. You can use code CSP2021 for 15% off the items you've selected. And thanks for checking them out. Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. Once again, we have another guest. This week's guest, if you listen to the Tim Herron episode, he was mentioned in there. He's a legit gunsmith, former Army artillery officer, and current firearms instructor. Let's welcome AJ Zito to the show. How you doing, AJ?
I'm good. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. I see I cracked a smile there when I introduced you as a legitimate gunsmith.
Yes, indeed.
Like I've done a few things to my pistols, but I am not a gunsmith.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of guys that we call them coffee table gunsmiths, and nothing wrong with that until you try and hang a shingle out and make money on it. Then maybe there might be a problem.
Yeah, there might be a little feedback on that one. Yeah, I consider myself a YouTube gunsmith.
Sure, absolutely, man.
So I'm actually kind of surprised we're talking on a weekend. I figured with all the stuff that you do, you would never be available on a weekend. However, here we are. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very surprising too. This is the one weekend I have free for like the next, 3 months. So it worked out perfectly.
Okay. So why don't you take a second and introduce yourself?
Sure. So again, like you said, I'm AJ Zito. I'm a real gunsmith. I build custom 1911s and double stack 1911s, which are commonly referred to as 2011s out there. So that's like, I guess now that would be my side gig. My primary gig is I run a company called Practical Performance, where I travel the country teaching performance shooting. So I've been doing that since 2015 under this banner, but teaching since about 2009 overall under different entities and different realms. Spent a lot of time in executive protection, private security detail training after I got out of the military. So, and now, I'm avid competitor. I believe shooting guns at a high level makes me much better at building guns at a high level. So, yeah. So that's what I do now.
That makes perfect sense. If you know what they're like when you're using them, then you can get a better understanding of what people would want. So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about this the other day. It's kind of like a gunsmith that can't shoot is like a violin maker that can't play the violin. Would you ever buy a violin from that guy? No, absolutely not. Same thing with a gunsmith. So,
yeah, that's a good analogy. Because I definitely would not.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I might as well just make it myself at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So, AJ, what we normally do at the very beginning is we ask 5 extremely personal questions to get to know you. It's almost as bad as a proctology exam. Maybe not quite, but
all right.
They're very basic. So what's your favorite movie?
Oh, man. So that is such a hard one. So you see the bookcase behind me.
Yeah.
In the other room, there's a bookcase relatively this side filled with movies. I love movies. So picking a favorite is, super difficult. Super difficult. I am probably, oh man. I don't even know. I don't know. Somewhere between John Wick and the 13th Warrior, somewhere in there. Those are some of my favorites.
The
in there.
13th Warrior. I don't even know if
Yep.
I've heard of that.
Oh, fantastic movie. Fantastic movie. Antonio Banderas plays an Arab, not quite an Arab prince, but an Arab gentleman. And it's basically the story of Beowulf told from a more realistic sense, I guess, and from his perspective. So just a fantastic movie, based on a book called, I think it was called The Eaters of the Dead. It's just amazing book, amazing movie. Highly recommend it for anyone that loves a good action flick with some good heart pounding stuff going on.
I will have to check that out. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
And Antonio Banderas is no slouch, so
Indeed.
should be a good flick.
Yeah.
Well, it's good you brought up books because that's question number 2. What's your favorite book?
Ooh, favorite book. That's a good question. I like a lot of books. I'll tell you, if I can narrow it down, honestly, the entire collection of the Sherlock Holmes stories would be my favorite, book if you compile them into a book.
Yeah.
So that would be my favorite.
Have you read them all?
I have read them all and multiple times.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I just, I love deductive reasoning, or inductive reasoning as it really is. But I just love the stories. I love the character in all the iterations of it. So yeah, just absolutely my favorite.
Okay. It's funny. When I was growing up, I used to read Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys all the time.
Sure. Absolutely.
Easy reading for a kid.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, my mom was a huge Nancy Drew fan, and for years and years, I tried to find her first edition copies of Nancy Drew. And I'm sure her love of that somehow ended up with my love of Sherlock Holmes. So
right.
It's great.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Different level, but very similar.
Exactly.
So one of the other co-hosts, he's working today, but the question he liked to ask everybody was, who's your favorite superhero?
Ooh, okay. Favorite superhero. I'm not sure this counts as a superhero, but I'm going to say Zorro by far.
Okay. Is that another Antonio Banderas reference?
No, actually, I was a huge Zorro fan long before Antonio Banderas ever played it. Back to Guy Williams and really Tyrone Power in the 30s and 40s. And really, I'll tell you, my love of Zorro comes from the fact that he has zero reason to do what he does. He's a rich Spanish landowner in California, and really has no reason to do what he does. There's no vengeance story. There's no anything other than his desire for justice, and that's why I like him. So
okay, so he's like the Hispanic Batman.
Except there's no vengeance story,
right?
So that's the thing, man. And he's a dark character, and he's fantastic. So I would say he would be my favorite.
Cool.
Plus, I mean, he's a master swordsman. Skill in any martial art is always a huge drive for me. So, yeah.
Now the next question, we might already know through the introduction, but favorite gun and caliber. Now, just because, let's say your favorite gun's a 1911 doesn't mean your favorite caliber is 45.
Right.
So they can be different.
Yeah. So, and that's a great segue, because my favorite is absolutely a 1911, but in 9mm, which I know is sacrilege for a lot of people until you shoot one that's well built, and then you go, oh, gotcha. I get it. Yeah, exactly. So absolutely. 9mm, 1911 government size gun is fantastic.
And I would say before the 2000s, I would say it would be sacrilege to mention 9mm and a 45. But now, even with the quality of the 9mm ammunition and the technology with all the improvements, I've got a 45 back there that was built back in the 80s at
Yeah.
Quantico. And, I would never want to see it in 9mm, but I would definitely own a 1911 today in 9mm for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, so I try to ask one personal question that's more, instead of general questions like that, one that's focused just on you. And
Okay.
with all the military guys, I like to ask you, what was your favorite time or moment in the military? It can be a duty station. It can be any experience you have.
Sure. Absolutely. 100% deployment. And I'll never forget, we were on a QRF, quick reaction force kind of setup at the time. And some firefight kicked off, and they track this guy into this little group of houses. And so we get called out, QRF, and we've got apparently one of the Blackhawks was out there flying around and saw the houses, and the roads where we were super scrambled. Maps don't do it justice and stuff. So the the Blackhawk helicopter said, "Hey, just follow me." And this guy's flying, 60 feet off the deck, and we're right behind him going 70 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour down these dirt roads. And that was probably the coolest moment in my military career, for sure. Going to hit a house and following this low-flying Blackhawk, with Apaches over on the other side. It was just super cool moment. But yeah, my deployment was the best time I spent in the military, hands down. So, yeah.
Okay. And I know you only spent 3 years in.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just not what you expected, so you wanted to get out, or what made you decide to get out?
Yeah, absolutely not what I expected. Without getting too deep into it, I got really tired of people basing their actions on their next job or getting promoted versus what was supposed to be done and why we were there. So I had just had enough of that, and it's no secret the Army and I just did not see eye to eye on almost anything. Yeah, I knew when my time was up. I did almost stay in. I had a really great battalion commander at my last unit when I was a fire support officer, and I did almost stay in. And I'll never forget, it was the last day, and I had just come out of the battalion commander's office with him. He's like, "Hey, I want to send you to the schoolhouse and be a teacher, or come back and, be the battalion fire support officer." And I was like, "Well, maybe I'll do one more deployment." And I was going to drop my packet for SF, which just wasn't. They pretty much let me know that's not happening, period, unless you attempt another deployment. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll do it." And then I ran into another officer there who was a battalion staff officer, and the interaction with him immediately reminded me why I was leaving the military and solidified the decision. So up until my last day, I almost stayed. And then that one interaction with that one person, I said, "Nope, this is exactly why." So yeah, we just didn't see eye to eye on how soldiering should be, I guess. So
I got you. I spent 9.5 years in the Marines, and when I got out, it was a lot of the same stuff. It was very political back then.
Yep.
It was Clinton's first term.
Oof.
I was at the schoolhouse at Quantico at the sniper school, and we were having to go through sensitivity training. They sent a representative from, so apparently they have Green Berets up at the White House to help with security stuff, things like that.
Sure.
They actually sent one down to our schoolhouse to monitor us. That's
wow.
what the Clinton people did.
Yeah.
So stuff like that was like, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
So
Yep, it is. And it was
crazy.
disappointing. You know, I had spent my entire life planning on being in the Army and staying in the Army forever. And you know, less than a year into it, I knew it was not where I was going to stay. But it is what it is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have wonderful memories, and there's still a lot of guys that, I served with that are good people. So it's all good.
Absolutely.
So when did you first shoot a gun?
Oh, man. When did I first shoot a gun? You know, honestly, I cannot remember the first time. I was very young. I know that.
Okay.
Maybe 5 or 6
So you
years
grew up with
old.
guns.
Well, so I say that yes and no. You know, I grew up outside Chicago, about 40 miles, 50 miles outside Chicago. So we had guns, but we really didn't shoot guns. Like, it was that your typical, like, hey, once a year we broke out the gun and shot, 10, 15 rounds out of it, and at a little target, and then, all right, we did our shooting for the year kind of stuff, or pulled out a shotgun, threw some clays and shot those, and then it was like, okay, we shot for a year.
It's like you're a requal.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it wasn't really a thing. I didn't really grow up shooting, quite a bit. And then I went to a military high school, and rifle qualification was part of our curriculum. You got graded on it. So I remember my first year in high school, I tried out for our rifle team thinking I knew how to shoot rifles, and I didn't. So right about then, I remember talking to my dad and being like, listen, I need to learn how to shoot, really shoot. And, I learned well enough at the time to qualify as an expert marksman, which, really in the long run isn't an overwhelming feat, but it requires good fundamentals, at least, to apply them. So yeah, that's where I kind of learned about fundamentals and started shooting. And then I really started shooting when I got into college, and when I got into college, and then when I got back from Iraq, that's when I really started shooting heavily. So, but yeah, no, didn't really grow up shooting that much.
And if I remember correctly, did you go to a military high school?
Yeah, so I went to a military high school and a military college. So,
okay.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, in high school, what rifle were they giving you to qualify with?
Oh man, it was a and I forget the model number, but it was a 22 caliber Remington, large stock. God, I cannot remember. Old gun, real old training gun. Old peep sights. It was great though.
Peep
I mean, it was
wow.
good. Yep, legit peep sights. And we did it. We had a rifle range in the basement of the school, a legit rifle range. And we would go down there once a year to qualify. You'd shoot. Qualification was like 2 weeks long. So one day, 2 days a week, you shot in the first week to familiarize yourself with shooting. And then, your last 2 weeks, you had, two attempts to qual. And the qual at the time was really like, can you group? All right, if you can group, you qualify expert. It's like, oh, okay, great. So yeah, nothing incredibly difficult. But yeah, now, military high school, military college.
What college was it?
So I went to Norwich University, Military College of Vermont. The country's oldest private military institution. So.
Wow.
Yep. Literally cool. The birthplace of ROTC. So, yep.
That is cool.
Yeah, lots of tradition, very old. 1819, the school was established. Lots of history there.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Now, so you decide you graduate college, you go into the Army, you decide you're going to get out. How do you transition from the Army to being a gunsmith slash competitor slash protective body detail type stuff? I mean,
Sure. So when I was getting out of the Army, I kind of knew, right? So I had, I guess one of the other really cool things I got to do when I was in the Army was I was a liaison to Vice President Cheney's Secret Service counter assault team. So I got to spend some time with those guys on their protective detail. Very short, but it was very cool. It turned out one of the guys was a Norwich guy as well, and then a couple of other guys, were from my hometown. And I was like, oh man, this is super cool. Tell me more about this counter assault team thing. They kind of laid it out, and I was like, well, maybe this PSD kind of stuff, protective detail stuff, is something I want to look into. So when it came time for me to kind of get out of the Army, I had a friend that kind of pointed me in the direction of how to get started working executive protection and private security details. So pretty much like the minute I got out of the Army, I packed up my apartment, threw everything in one of those pods where they like store it for a long term.
yeah.
Packed 2 weeks worth of clothing, any equipment I thought I needed, and I headed out to this school in Colorado to spend 28 days learning how to work executive protection, and just went kind of all into that. And then while I was there, the last week or so is their shooting package. So finished Top Gun in their shooting package, and they offered me a job as a shooting instructor or an adjunct shooting instructor. And I said, "Oh, okay." So let's see how this goes. So I taught there for several years, both in their executive protection and their private security detail programs. That kind of started me down the teaching realm of shooting. So and then funny enough, I was teaching there 1 year for their PSD program, and worked with a lot of really good dudes, a lot of really great PSD guys there, and I was waiting on a contract, and my very sad PSD career ended up me waiting on contracts forever and ever and ever and ever, and never getting to go do anything. And I was very upset about that. So I spent more time teaching than I did doing, which was very upsetting to me. So right about my last bit, I was teaching at the school, waiting on a contract, and we had these guns that we rented out to students for our shooting package. At that time, the shooting package was 10 days long, and of course, you put enough rounds through a gun, guns start going down. And apparently, I was the only one that I worked on my own guns because I had taken guns to gunsmiths before, and it did not turn out the way I wanted it. So I was just working on my own guns, not really knowing what the hell I was doing. I'm sorry, not really knowing what I was doing.
No, you're fine.
But I understood how to rebuild an AR and how to rebuild a Glock and an MP and stuff. So I thought, man, it would be good to make some money in between contracts or waiting on contracts would be gunsmithing. And several years before that, I had someone build me a custom 1911, and I got to go down and see the process and watch him, for a day build it. And I thought, that's super cool. I could really get into that. And so I looked up a school. Once I got done there, I looked up a school for gunsmithing, found it, which ended up being Yavapai College in Arizona, Prescott, Arizona. I applied and they said, well, it's a 2-year waiting list. So we'll call you in 2 years. And I said, oh, okay. So I remember applying to another contract, and it must have been July. Yeah, July something, and school started like the second week of August. I applied to a contract, and then my phone rings, and it was one of the people from the school. They're like, hey, you still want to go to gunsmithing school? We got an opening, and you can get in this semester. And I was like, oh, okay. So again,
Wow.
I pack up all my stuff, and I go to gunsmithing school. And so I ended up out here. And again, I started to finish up my last year there. And then halfway through my last year, the program director offered me a job teaching there. So I taught gunsmithing for 5 years or so there. As I started, I took a break from teaching shooting to go to gunsmithing school because the schedules really don't work out at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I started teaching back at the college, I started picking up teaching shooting again, as well as gunsmithing. And so now I no longer teach at the college, and I just teach shooting and I build guns. So yeah,
Cool.
That's how it all fell together.
Okay. Interesting path to get to where you are today.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a bachelor's of science or did you have a bachelor's of arts before?
Yeah, so I had a bachelor's of arts in criminal justice.
Okay.
Yeah, which actually worked out pretty well because when I graduated the gunsmithing program, because I had military time and I had my bachelor's already, I ended up getting an associate's in applied sciences just based on because I had all my core stuff already done.
Right.
And then on top of that, so I ended up with another degree, an associate's degree. That.
But it wasn't like you had an engineering degree, so it was a cakewalk going through gunsmithing school.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. I knew just enough about gunsmithing to be dangerous to myself when I walked in there. So that was it.
That's
I
funny.
didn't know how to machine, didn't know how to do anything, so it was all I learned from the ground up there. But luckily, I pretty good mechanical aptitude. I like to figure out how things work. I like mechanics. So it was definitely spoke to me. I enjoyed it a lot. So and still do.
Now with as busy as you are, like you're saying, the next 3 months you're packed.
Yeah.
How much time do you get to actually work on building guns these days?
Not a lot.
Okay.
So I'll tell you, my weekly schedule normally looks about like this. I'll fly out to a class, teach the class, whether by myself or with, obviously Tim or Modern Samurai Project, Scott Jedlinski. I teach with him all the time. So I'll normally fly out, teach with them. Teach with him or on my own, get home at about between 4 and 8 p.m. And then about 8 a.m., 9 a.m. the next morning, I'll go into the shop and start working on guns. And I'll do that until I have to get on my flight for the next class the next day or so later.
Wow.
Yeah.
I assume do you drink coffee or some type of caffeinated beverage?
Lots and lots of coffee.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you're talking, I'm like, man, that's a lot of coffee.
Yes, sir. I've been trying to be really good and cut back because, a pot a day is now a little too shaky for me.
Right.
But yep.
So, and if someone were to order, say, a custom build, I mean, how long of a wait is it?
Yeah, so right now we're a minimum of 2 years out.
Okay.
Yep. And that's, that's based on the reason it's 2 years, is based on my teaching schedule right now with the amount of time I'm in the shop, plus parts availability. I estimate if you ordered a gun today, I would have it ready in about 2 years. Now, that being said, I have a backlog right now of, people that have been waiting patiently that are definitely coming close to that mark, and their guns are just getting finished up. So yeah.
Okay. And parts availability, based on what we're seeing going on in DC right now, could get much worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The there's a lot of factors, especially for a custom 1911 that get sent in when it comes to parts availability. I have a company that builds frames for me so that they're oversized and correct, and it has, practical performance on the side with my serial numbers that are associated with my company. But at one point I could call them up and be like, listen, I need 5 frames. These are the types of frames I need, and I need slides for them as well. How long? And they'd be like, 3 weeks. Okay, cool. Now I call up and I'm like, hey, I need 1 frame. They're like, cool, 3 to 4 months. It's like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yep. So, availability of steel, availability of their backlog, all sorts of things fall into it. And, now I'm sure everyone has figured out, if you've ever ordered anything from Brownells, Brownells is basically crashed at this point with all the people buying stuff, and it's the same at every other company. EGW, if you're familiar with the 1911 world, EGW builds lots of custom parts, oversized parts for gunsmiths, and we use a lot of their parts in my shop. But everyone else uses a lot of their parts too, so getting parts is
I've
rough.
got a 20 MOA base from them on that rifle right behind me.
Yep.
So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Holy cow. It's like the shortage moves from one thing to another, but never leaves, like ammo, parts. But it keeps the problem as it keeps migrating. The problem behind it doesn't get fixed.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. So yeah, it's gotten pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Now, at what point did you get into shooting competition?
Oh, you know what? That's a great question, and I just found this out yesterday.
Perfect timing.
Exactly. And the only reason I found it out was because my IDPA renewal was due, and they just sent me a new membership card, and it's got members since. So I started in IDPA competition in 2013, apparently. So
okay.
Yeah, so that's where I started, and I'll tell you, I had a real false sense of what my skills were at the time, for sure. Competition does an amazing job of letting you know where you really stand in the world. So, yeah. So I'll tell you, my first shooting competition was an IDPA classifier match. So I showed up, and I didn't really know a ton about it, and they were like, hey, you're going to shoot this. And I said, okay. So I shot that, and then they're like, okay, on the next stage, you're going to shoot this. And I said, okay. It's a classifier, so it's all standardized, stuff. So I shoot it, and they're like, oh my gosh, you made master. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Sounds pretty good to me. And yeah, that was that was wrong, very wrong.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, so I'll say this, and I'm not trying to disparage IDPA at all, but a master in IDPA is not the same as a master in USPSA. It is very different, and I really learned my lesson when I shot my first USPSA match. and I realized, oh, yeah, like this dentist is pretty good, and he just destroyed me. And I carry a gun for a living, so maybe there is more to this than I thought. So yeah, so that really was an eye opener, and it really let me know where I stood in the world of shooting, and I was not where I should have been or where I wanted to be. At that point in my shooting career. So yeah.
Now, what is your classification in USPSA?
So in USPSA, I am a master in single stack division, which is 1911's really just classic 1911 looking guns. So yeah.
Now, I'm also an IDPA member as well as USPSA.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it. It's fun. It's shooting.
Yep.
I mean, if you're in this, you enjoy it. So I enjoy all aspects of shooting.
Yeah.
But I feel like my USPSA game helped my IDPA game, and I feel like my IDPA game keeps me honest with what my dot is doing and calling my shots, because it's so much more critical to make sure your shots are accurate. And I don't want to, not always, but every stage is the same in IDPA in that you need to minimize the number of points down.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in USPSA, it might be like, you know what, I can shoot some C's here because I need to shoot fast and I need to keep my time at a minimum. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So there's a different strategy at times, but I think they benefit each other in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll 100% agree with that. It's very uncommon for us to see a high level IDPA shooter that isn't also a USPSA shooter. It really doesn't happen that way, and not vice versa. IDPA, I really like the new. I don't know which iteration this week we're on of the rules in IDPA, but the new rules that have just come out, I think IDPA is in its best place than that it's been at. I was a big fan of the 1 second change for points down. Used to be a half per point. Right. Now it's a full second per point. But really what that did, it's good and bad. What that did was it eliminated the need for me to decide if it was worth making up a shot. Now, I know if it's not a down zero, because there's not a shot out there I can't make up in 1 second. It's guaranteed. If I don't call a good shot on it, I'm making it up. And that's, part of USPSA is very complex. It's a very complex sport because you do need to make those instantaneous decisions of, is this shot worth making up a Charlie on or a Delta on, or was it fast enough where I can leave it and absorb those points and still have a great time? So there's much more thinking, but the nice thing too, as a guy who carries a single stack 1911 and 9mm with a dot and a light on it from Appendix, now I can shoot in IDPA in carry optics division with the stuff I carry every day, which is awesome. Versus, if I wanted to shoot my carry gun in USPSA, I'm in open division, which it's really hard to compete against guys with compensators and 38 super and 170 millimeter magazines when I'm carrying a 10-round gun.
Yeah, you're definitely not competing against them. You might be in the same division, but you're not competing against them.
Exactly. And I mean, I've done it for fun. I used to shoot USPSA from Appendix quite a bit. But now that IDPA has allowed it, I'm really looking forward to shooting IDPA this year and next year with the new rules. So I can actually use my carry stuff, which is great. So
and that was going to be my next question now is, so you're shooting a 1911 with a slide mounted optic?
For my carry gun. Yep.
Okay.
I shoot a. Yep. That's it.
And competition or
no? So
okay.
in competition. So I guess I should rephrase that now. IDPA. I'm shooting the same gun I carry. Exact same gun I carry.
Okay, that's what
In
I do the same thing.
Yeah, so because I can do that within the rule set and be competitive. Part of the thing about uh, uh, me is, I mean, I like to win. I'm competitive. I like to be the best, and I will do what it takes. Skill set wise to do that. So in USPSA, my carry gun is not competitive. They don't allow single action guns in carry optics division. So I shoot a government size 1911 in single stack division. I was shooting a 45 up until literally yesterday. I switched over to my my 9mm single stack 1911 iron sighted gun. And I'll be shooting that for the foreseeable future in USPSA.
Now, how much do you think the minor scoring will affect you?
It hurts. It definitely hurts. There's no doubt about it. So I shot my first local match in almost a year yesterday because I was actually home.
Okay.
So, and I shot it with my minor gun. And, Charlie's hurt. You're scoring about half the amount of points as you would if I was shooting 45. But really, the decision came down to I am on the road so much and I am shooting 9mm so much that I am not that guy that can go from 9mm to 45, in an instant and have the same performance. I have to spend time there. Recoil's a thing. Timing of recoil's a thing.
Yeah.
I can't, and I know Mike Seeklander and I have had that conversation before, and he's like, no, it doesn't matter. I can go back and forth, watch. And I'm like, that's great, Mike. That's you. I'm not that guy. Right.
Right.
I need time to learn the recoil of the gun, learn the timing of the gun. So for the foreseeable future, I'll be shooting 9mm in everything. But yeah, bleeding Charlie's hurts. I got to be far more disciplined in my sight packages, as well as with my makeup shots. Sometimes it definitely pays. With a major gun, I would almost never blink at a Charlie hit because I'm like, it's 4 points, I'm good to go, and I'll just move on. With a minor gun, I'll probably start making up a lot more Charlies than I had in the past. Tim and I have had this conversation quite a lot. I'm always trying to shoot somewhere between 93 and 95% of points, available points. And that's a lot harder with a minor gun. So yeah, I have to accept a lot less. So
right. Well, and Nils almost completely changed the game last year.
Yep.
So he shows that you can be competitive with a 9 even against major scoring. So
absolutely. And we've had this debate. So I shot 9 minor for a long time, and I've told this story before, but I think it's always funny, especially now that I've gone back to minor. The day I threw down my minor single stack gun was the day I missed making master by 1 target point.
wow.
And I was so mad. I was like, all right, forget this. And I grabbed a major gun out, and the next classifier I made master, just because of the points difference between minor and major. But Tim and I debated forever. And he's the one that convinced me to stick with major. And I did for quite a while, but now he's starting to come around to the minor camp.
Oh.
So it's still debatable, very debatable. But we saw this year, just not too long ago, Dave Savigny, for those that are familiar with Dave, came back to single stack nationals after quite a hiatus, and shot a minor gun and took second. And it was amazing, and it was like a legitimate, like, yeah, man, he whooped up on some people. No doubt about it. And it was with a minor gun, legitimately. Now, had he been shooting major, he still wouldn't have had enough points to beat Nils, because Nils was on another level, like Nils is.
Nils is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, he's an amazingly skilled shooter.
Yes.
Because he has put the work in. And it shows. And you're absolutely right. He's proven to everyone that, listen, man, you can be the fastest one out there and still be the most accurate one out there. So that's what he does, and that's why he wins. So, but yeah, Dave Savigny really laid the hurt on and kind of let everyone know, hey, single stack minor is a thing. We can make this work. You just got to be a good shooter to do it, or a great shooter to do it, because Dave is.
Yeah. Well,
sure.
and had Nils not competed, I mean, Dave would have won with a minor
absolutely
single stack. I mean, it would have been wow. That would have set everything on fire.
Yep, absolutely. And it would have been the first legitimate nationals win with a minor gun, and it's coming. Eventually,
it is coming.
I don't know when, but it's coming, and it's going to happen at some point.
It is.
So,
because one of these high-level guys is going to compete with a 9mm gun and win. And everybody like, well, like you said, they're like, well, we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when or who.
Exactly. So I hope it's Tim. I really do. But it's coming sooner or later. It's coming.
Now, how did you and Tim hook up? How did you guys meet each other?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So the first time I'll say we met was actually we were doing a podcast on a well, let me put it like this. I was on a podcast that was a bunch of other 1911 Gunsmith guys. And this podcast is infamous because it went 8 hours long, and that was just the recorded time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was me, Dave Laubert of Defensive Creations, Joe Chambers of Chambers Custom, and then a bunch of other 1911 guys jumping in and out. And Tim was there. He jumped into the conversation. That was really, the first time he and I had ever talked a little bit in there. And then not too long after that, I wrote him a message, and I said, hey, I want to sign up for your class, or actually I said, I want to host your class up by me. And he said, yeah, sure. No problem. Well, he happened to have another class he was teaching down in Phoenix. I'm about 2 hours north of Phoenix, sooner. And I was like, well, I'm going to come down to that class and take it, because I need this information now. So I drove down, and that was actually the first time Tim and I met in person, was at his class. Yeah. And, fast friends, since then, of course, 1911 guys. I mean, diehard 1911 guys plus competitive shooters. It was great. And, I can't say enough good things about him. One of my best friends in the whole world. So
I just don't know how you guys shoot in Phoenix.
Yeah, holy cow. I avoid it like the plague.
Okay.
December to February is great
Not
to
bad.
shoot in Phoenix. Yeah.
Right, because it gets down below 90.
Exactly. 85. But it's fine. Yeah. So the nice thing about where I'm at, because I'm up in the mountains, it's rare for us to break 100 up here. So it's pretty great. So again, shot my first match in a long time yesterday, and it was 75, breezy.
Oh, wow.
It was just fantastic. And I was like, yep, this is why I moved here. This is great. So, but yeah. So I'll never forget one of the, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
One of the first conversations Tim and I had, was about him stealing the name of my company. He actually pointed it out and sent me a message early on. I'm not even sure if we had met yet at the time. And he was like, "Oh, hey, yeah, so your company name is Practical Performance." I was like, "Yep." He's like, "My class's name is Practical Performance." I was like, "Yep, except my company's been around since 2015. He's like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "It's okay, dude. Do I need to change the name of my class? No. You go right ahead and use Practical Performance." So, and still to this day, the name of his class is Practical Performance, which I think is funny. So every time I host Tim, it's Tim Herron's Practical Performance, sponsored by Practical Performance. So we got all the performances going on.
Right. Oh, goodness.
So yeah.
You guys do that much? How frequently do you guys do classes together?
Yeah. So our joint class. So we have a joint class, 2 joint classes actually. We have the first one, which is Practice with Purpose, which is a 1-day version, and then we have our 2-day version, which is Train for Mastery. And those are our joint classes. And this year, I think we're doing that 6 times this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then we've got so far just a couple on the books for next year right now. But again, yeah, so that class is super cool. It's a different approach than we've seen anywhere else, because it really is a technique agnostic class. It is all about how to level up your performance, and really how to practice to get better. Because the number one thing we do, especially guys, when we hit plateaus, is we just keep trying to do the same thing over and over again, and it just doesn't work.
Right.
So these classes are really born out of that idea of, well, how come I'm not getting better? How do I get better? What are the things I need to do to get better? And it's not a technique change. Lots of us throw technique changes in when really it's a training methodology that needs to change, not the technique that needs to change. So
Kinda
yeah,
like lifting weights. You reach a certain plateau, you've got to do something method-wise different to break that plateau.
absolutely. And that's one thing a lot of people forget is, as maybe not as exerting as it is, but shooting is still an athletic endeavor. It really is. There's hand-eye coordination, visual acuity, all sorts of things all play into this. It is an athletic endeavor, yet we don't necessarily treat it like athletic endeavors like weightlifting or running or doing any of these other athletic tasks. And really, we need to approach them like that, as well as understanding how we learn and how we progress as humans, human beings. There's so much of it that goes into shooting that we just think, oh, if I just do this millions and millions and millions of times the same way, I will get better. And it's like, well, yeah, to a point, and then you won't get better, and then you'll stay exactly there. And I promise you, learning a different way to do it may not be the answer. Once you've got solid technique, It's training methodology that needs to progress. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a really famous guy called that the definition of insanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He might have been onto something. I don't know.
Now, you mentioned Scott Jedlinski, the Jedi.
Yep.
So I know he's had some recent surgery, so he's been slowed a little bit, which has probably picked up the training pace for everybody else.
Let me tell you about his slowed down, right?
Okay.
And I hope he sees this, right? So he goes into surgery and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna slow it down." I was like, "Oh, okay." 6 weeks later, we're on the road for 35 days straight, slowing down.
6 weeks later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It was basically the minute the doctor said, as long as you keep doing physical therapy and working out, you can go on the road. And it was like, okay, here we go. We're on the road now.
Wow.
So yeah. Yep. No grass grows under his feet. I promise you that. So
wow.
Yeah. Go all the time.
So how, teaching wise, how, and I don't want to say difficult, but what's the transition from teaching red dots all the time to like a 1911 with iron sights?
Sure. So I'm going to give you one of the dirty secrets of shooting.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, of shooting iron sights, and that's, you should be shooting your iron sights more closely to how you shoot a red dot versus the other way around. One of the things I talk heavily in my classes, we've pretty much been taught how to do two things incorrectly in our entire shooting careers, and that's shooting pistol sights at practical speeds and gripping the handgun. We really have done a disservice to ourselves and to shooters by not fully understanding those concepts. I'm a huge proponent of being more, there are fluctuating statuses on this, but more target focused with iron sights than we are typically taught. As a former precision marksman yourself, right? The clear, crisp front sight makes a lot of sense at certain times, but there's a lot of stuff we do with pistols that actually ends up hurting us because we can't refine targets. Right. And if I can't refine my target, I can't really place accurate shots on my target. So for me, and this is something I ran into, I was teaching again at that school in Colorado, and we were doing there's tons of names for it, but we called it a walk back drill, and just see how far we could get back. And I realized, right about the 100-yard-ish, 120-yard-ish mark, I could no longer refine the AC size piece of steel, and with a clear, crisp front sight focus, and so I would start missing. And the day I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and focus on that piece of steel and just let my sights be kind of all blurry. And 100 yards, 120 yards, 150 yards, we ran out of space at 175 yards, but I was placing accurate shots at 175 yards. And the most impressive part of that was that it was with a Smith & Wesson M&P. So, that had to be good. But that was probably the day that I started really embracing more of what I refer to as soft sight focuses on my iron sights for a lot of applications. And I think if we really adopted that, which is typically how we teach red dots, a target focus with what I refer to as dot awareness. I want to be aware of the red dot, not focused on the red dot when I shoot red dots. If we apply that same idea to iron sights, I've seen we have a lot better success in our shooting when we do that. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent of more soft sight pictures, more harder target focuses on all sighting systems that I've utilized. So
yeah, and Tim had brought up something I had never even considered. And he talked about basically quartering the target with a gross sight picture, just using the rear sight. And I was like, wow, I had never even considered that. And It's funny, just last week, someone on Instagram who had listened to that podcast posted a video of them shooting, saying, I heard Tim Herron talking about this. I'd never heard of it before. He's like, wow, a light bulb has gone off. And And I mean, because with a scoped rifle, that's what you do.
Yep.
You've got your aiming area and you quarter your aiming area. And when he said that, I was like, when he was just talking about, you cut your target in half with the rear sight, I was like, you're just quartering the target like I would do with a scope. I mean, I had never, all the years, I mean, I think I qualified expert with a pistol in the military like 5 or 6 times.
Mhm.
And never once did I ever consider, let me just quarter the target with my sights. That would have made so much more sense. Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and again, had I just treated it like a dot and focused on my target and not my front sight so much, I probably would have done a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, Tim brings up he goes more in depth than I do in my class about the importance of the rear sight, and how much we honestly underutilize the rear sight traditionally versus how we could really be utilizing it a lot more. And that technique of having the target is definitely one of the strong suits of it for sure. But yeah, absolutely.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.